Morning, December 3rd, 2022, 11:01 a.m. on a Saturday morning. Welcome aboard. This is Saturday Live Show, and today's subject, bring up here the thumbnail. Oops, I can't show you the thumbnail because it just came up. All right. Troubleshooting quiz on Saturday Live, December 3rd. I'm going to give a little introduction to the show today, then go say hello to people in chat, and then we'll turn to the people in Zoom. And anyone in Zoom, I'd ask you to stay on mute for the time being. Mathew will tell us the symptoms of a recent issue he experienced. We'll let the chat room and Zoom participants ask questions about the symptoms and discuss ideas and strategies for troubleshooting the symptom. Mathew will provide results of incremental troubleshooting, eventually leading to the resolution. And P.S. I don't know what the solution was. This is the email from Matthew Barnes. It says, "Hi, Doug. It's been a while since I've been on the show, but I've had an interesting problem with my PC recently that I think would be interesting for a video. The issue was when I was playing video games, and everything on the PC would freeze. I could move the keyboard and mouse, but nothing I would click on would respond. I could hop on Saturday's show and talk about the diagnostic and solution if there's time. Maybe have people guess what the solution is based on the description." So I like this idea. I like this style of a show, and so we'll go ahead and say hello to people in the chat room, and then bring Matthew on to tell us all about it. Say hello. Chris Garrett came in first. Josh Kinder, hello to you. Rick and Robert, good morning. Tim Sal, good morning. Thank you, Matthew Barnes, for the $2, £2, not $2, £2, a little more than $2. He says hi to everybody. And Tony Wallow, thank you for the $1.99 super chat. Good morning and afternoon from Tony. Jonathan, hello. Ran Israel. There's Matthew Barnes showing up in the chat room, and he is present in Zoom. We'll turn to him in a little bit here. And if anyone else wants to come in Zoom and participate in the Zoom session, you're welcome to do that. If you want to join the Zoom session and you don't have the credentials, you can send an email to me, DougBetts at LiveWindowsTraining.com. And I will reply with the credentials if I recognize you. If you haven't been active in the chat room and I don't recognize you, I need you to be familiar with us in the chat room first, because Zoom bombers is a thing that happens. Then let's see, there's Jonathan again, Tim, Ran Israel, Bronk, Jonathan. Tony says AV-DVR good, video good from Jonathan. Bobby Warren, hello. Bronk9 again. George Armstrong, hello to you. CFWW. George, I recognize your name. You've been around. I don't know if I recognize you from here, from Carrie Holzman's stream. That name sure seems familiar to me. So I'm going to go ahead and turn you blue, my friend. CFWW, Kenny Whitten, Boss, hello. Jalon Dog. Well, there's certainly a lot of ideas for an approach to fix this apparent crashing problem. Bouts of things to check into potentially. Probably lots of things, maybe. Speedy C, Mortant, hello. It's Jonathan again. Want to mute. What does he mean with move the keyboard? Well, I assume that he meant you can move the keyboard around, and the screen doesn't respond. Isn't that a thing? Move your keyboard. I mean, you can move it forward, you can move it up and down, left and right. That's what I figured what he means with move the keyboard. I got a better idea what it is. Let's see, did I miss people's names? Ran, Seldon, Jonathan Wintermute, George. Yeah, Carrie. So George is saying that I do probably recognize his name from Carrie's stream. I think he's new here. Move the keyboard is bad grammar on my part. That's what move the keyboard means. It means bad grammar. Doug, my coworker, Haley, have Frontier and it have problems. She can't get online and it's laggy and pixelating. Bobby, I'm not sure if we're going to have time to address that today, and I need to let you all know that I'm going to be a little bit make today's live stream a little bit shorter because I have places to go, things to do, people waiting for me, which means Fortnite. Today's a big day for Fortnite. They're moving from one chapter to another, and it's all big blown up event. But I need to start dealing with that in about an hour. Lawn Dog will be present, multitasking. Gary, wireless keyboard. Yeah, if you're having trouble moving the keyboard around, then try using a wireless keyboard. Maybe you'll have more freedom of movement, right? Is that what we mean? The Bronc 9 had 2 BSD, black screens of death, on yesterday's program. Failed file protector, sys memory, and stop code. And again, we're going to go straight into, I've deleted so far already, huh? I'm going to bring Mathew up here. Mathew, on your marks, get set, almost go. And bring you up over here. Punch, punch. There he is. Hello, Mathew. Speak. He says, wait, he's got to mute his, maybe he's muting his YouTube audio. Oh, have I? Oh, I'm muted. I'm sorry. Now you can hear me through Zoom. That was my mistake. Now you should be able to hear me through Zoom. Okay. Good morning, bud. It's not morning for you, is it?
No, it's evening here, just after 7 o'clock.
Australia, right?
No, the UK.
UK. Why did I think Australia? I should have known UK because of the super chat you did today in pounds. And thank you for that again. All right. So you have this issue. I'm gonna reread the description just in case people came in late. I'll bring it up on screen here again. Let's see, is that it? Nope, that's not the right button. Push the right button, Doug. What he described, yeah, here it is. Problem with my PC. The issue was when I was playing video games, the game and everything on the PC would freeze. I could move the keyboard and mouse, but nothing I would click on would respond. Okay, that's it. So why don't you start with explaining what moving the keyboard means?
Not proofreading my email before I sent it, probably. But I suppose what I actually mean is I could hit caps lock key, scroll lock key, and I would see the lights on the keyboard respond. Okay.
How about the Windows key? Would the Windows menu respond? The Windows key.
Nothing would come up, no.
You press the Windows key, nothing would come up. All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to pop out chat over here. So how about let's see if people ask more questions in chat about the symptoms, or if you have more to tell us about the symptoms. And for now, let's stick with the symptoms. And by the way, if you didn't recognize it, when we're done, when we get your solution, that's pretty much going to be the end of today's stream. So
okay,
we'll play with this a little bit.
I will say I watched your video with Carrie the other day, and the term unfair question, unfair description applies to this, because intentionally I haven't mentioned all the story.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Well, let's see do we have any question? Okay, Gary asked, did you try Control-Shift-Escape to bring up Task Manager?
Yes, and nothing happened when I did that.
So the keyboard command of Control-Shift-Escape did not respond.
That's right.
Okay, so with caps lock and num lock responding, that tells us there is still communication between the keyboard and the computer. But so far you haven't been able to get any response from Windows from the keyboard.
Correct.
Right? Is it a wired keyboard or wireless, Gary asks?
It's wired.
Okay. And the mouse, you could move the mouse on the screen and you would see the pointer move around, but when you try, nothing you clicked on would respond.
Yeah, I could hover over the Windows key, for example, click on it, and it was like it was trying to open, but even waiting a few minutes, nothing opened.
Okay.
So I concluded, it definitely wasn't responsive at that point.
Now, you said this is when you were playing games. So does the game take up the entire screen, or are you able to see anything of Windows at the same time that the game is active?
Well, I have a second screen that I would have Spotify on, let's say. And again, I would hover them out. I'd be able to initially Alt Tab out the game, and I could hover the mouse over the other window that was open. But as soon as I clicked on it, got the spinning wheel on the mouse, call it the spinning circle of death.
Yeah.
Is one name for it. I would get that, and again, nothing would happen no matter how long I would wait.
I think also that, well, the term throbber indicates a wait indicator, but that spinning circle you're describing now, I'm not sure is a throbber. So, but you just said that Alt-Tab worked. You were able to switch to a different program?
Yes, able to tab out the game and move the mouse over to the other screen. But then if I clicked back on the game and tried to go back in, nothing would happen. Then it couldn't get back into the game.
All right, let me go take some questions from chat room here. That means the keyboard still, let's see, Rand says, that just means the keyboard still receives power. Well, power, it's batteries for a wireless keyboard. But if the computer is, if the caps lock key on the keyboard lights up, I think that only happens if the computer responds with that. Well, that's a good point. If the computer's not responding, will the caps lock key still come on? Guess I'm not certain about that. But I've always used caps lock and numlock lights on the keyboard as an indicator whether the computer is responding to the keyboard. Guess I haven't proven that to myself. Probably, obviously, but thought I would mention, did you try rebooting Control-Alt-Delete or sign out and back in? All right, so how about you go ahead and respond to that, Mathew?
Well, if I would hit Control-Alt-Delete again, nothing would happen.
Okay, Control-Alt-Delete would not.
Yeah, I couldn't open the start menu to try and sign out because there was no response.
Okay, that answers that. Moving on. People saying hello. Has this crash happened before?
So here's the first bit of information that you didn't know. So this issue started out in August, but it only happened maybe once or twice. And I put it down to, just one of those things. But then in September, it started happening more regularly, maybe 2 times a week. And November is when it started happening basically every time I would try and play a game.
Oh, all right. All right. Moving on in the chat questions. Is it repeatable? So yes, you've answered that. It does happen. Does it always happen when you try to play that game?
I tried a couple of different games, and although it would be a different amount of time before it would happen, it would always happen. But maybe with one game, let's say it took half an hour. The other game, maybe I could play for 2 hours before it would happen.
Okay. So a variety of different games, all of them would have this symptom.
Yeah, eventually.
Right? Okay. Continuing on. Sound like need video card drivers update or upgrade. Just give me a yes or no. Is that on point? Did that turn out to be part of the solution?
Might have been.
Might have been. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's continue on with other questions. So that's on the table for video code drivers update. The mouse does move. Yes, that's very clear that the mouse is able to move, but when he clicks on things, it looks like it's trying to click on it, but you don't get a response. How about when you move your mouse to that other screen, when you hover the mouse over different icons, they'll light up a little bit to indicate that you're hovering over them. Would it do that?
I don't have any other icons on the other screen, but I can say when I would hover over the Windows key, it would change to indicate I'm hovering over it.
Okay, I'm gonna demonstrate that here. Let's go here. So I'm gonna move my mouse down to the Windows button, and there, when I go over the Windows button, we see a little bit of a difference in the lighting on it. So that's what I was referring to, and you have just said yes, it did do that. So that is an indication clearly that the mouse moving, and there is a responsiveness to Windows, but when you click on that, nothing would happen. You would not get this menu popping up, right?
Correct.
Okay, then moving on. Did Spotify continue to stream audio, or did it go numb, mute, quiet?
Yes, it would. The first thing that would actually happen is any audio that was playing, let's say through Spotify in this case, would freeze. And then a few seconds later is when the actual game would freeze.
So Spotify would freeze first. The audio from Spotify would freeze first before you saw the symptom in the game.
That's right, but not specifically Spotify. If, let's say, I had a YouTube video playing, the same thing would happen there.
All right, good. The story deepens here. What make a video card, AMD or NVIDIA? From Jonathan.
It's an NVIDIA.
NVIDIA video card. Okay. Now let's see, previous questions. I haven't been saying the people's names who are participating here in the quiz. So there's, let's see, Ran Israel and Gary Weisberger and Sam Mack, Lawn Dog. Yeah, let's see. There's Ran Israel again and Ryan. Then Wintermute asks, did you try Windows Control-Shift-B to restart the graphics driver?
I didn't know that was a thing.
I didn't either. I think I've come across it before, but it hasn't locked into my awareness. So that's Windows key, Control-Shift, Windows key, Control-Shift, and the letter B. Yeah, that rings a bell of familiarity, like I have read that before or came across that information. It just hasn't stuck in my Doug brain yet, because I haven't used it. I gotta actually use it. I'm not gonna do that now because my graphics driver is kind of busy right now, and I don't want to reset it. Because it might crash the stream. I don't know what it would do. Should I try it at the end of today's stream? That could be fun. At the end of today's stream, when I'm ready to sign out, remind me in the chat room to try Windows Control-Shift-B and see if that crashes the stream. Oh, what do we got here? Rand says, I thought he said it's a wired keyboard. He did. He did tell us it's a wired keyboard. What was that in relation to? Was that in relation to the previous where... Oh, yeah. So that must be in relation to when I was, ran up here, said that just means the keyboard's still receiving power, and I responded saying it has batteries. Well, you're correct in calling me out on that because it was a wired keyboard, so there are no batteries. So you're saying that the caps lock key and num lock key responding simply means that the computer is providing power to the keyboard rather than Windows actually interacting to that command, or actually it'd be the computer reacting to that command, because it's not Windows that would respond to the request for caps lock, it would be the computer. So you're saying it just means that it still receives power, and it's not actually the CPU responding to that command. Interesting. Not sure where that takes us, but interesting. Lawn Dog, does he seem to have a little bit of control over the machine when it's in this state? So, oh, no, I read that wrong. Doug, he does seem to have a little bit of control over the machine. Yeah, because he can move the mouse around when it's in the state. So it sounds like using the word crash might be a software crash between programs. All right, fair enough. Maybe a crash of drivers, or even a crash of hardware. It certainly is. The word crash is kind of a very broad term. So the computer obviously has not blue screened. It's not totally locked up. Light on the keyboard will respond without Windows. Oh, okay, that's a good point, because yeah, when the computer's just in BIOS setup, you could press caps lock and num lock, so it's the computer responding. What point in the boot process does that start happening? Is this what I'm driving at there? Is the CPU involved in that? It seems like the CPU would have to be involved in that at some level. I'm not sure if that's an important piece. Doug, I missed what kind of machine we are dealing with, a laptop or desktop computer. All right, go ahead and give us that piece of information, Matthew.
It's a desktop. It's one that you connected to before to do with that Ethernet driver issue.
Okay. Is it a custom build? Is it a major brand name or what?
It's a custom build.
Okay. How about giving us a motherboard brand
Sure.
and model, if you know it?
Gigabyte Z490 Aorus Elite AC.
Okay. Zulu 490 Aorus, and you said gigabyte.
That's right.
Okay. Then let's go on. What else is being asked? What version and update of Windows and drivers and game? Well, he's told us that it's multiple different games where this symptom happens. What version and update of Windows? Well, we're not going to go through versions of all the drivers, but let's go with version of Windows. The major version and the minor version.
So the problem started when I was on 21H2, I believe, and as part of the diagnostic, I didn't think it would make a difference, but it's worth a try. Let's go to 22H2. It's the latest one. Maybe there's a fix in there, but still same problem occurred.
Same problem. Windows 10 Pro or Home?
Professional.
Okay. Continuing in chat. If it is a desktop, Doug, what's the last time the machine had been cleaned? Do you use like Windex and microfiber cloths to clean the tower? All right, Doug. Last time the machine has been cleaned.
Don't clean it, so.
Yeah, I think you would need to get more specific about that, about clean. I guess maybe he's thinking other software, clutterware on it. Let's go past that, because I can't get very specific on that. Have you monitored RAM usage? From Jim Cassandros. Monitored RAM usage. Well, I guess that would be bringing up Task Manager and looking at memory activity. But you can't bring it up at that time when this happens. So maybe, Jim, more specifically about what you mean by monitoring RAM usage. Does that trigger any thoughts to you, Matthew?
What I'll say is RAM wasn't the solution to
Okay.
this, and didn't get to that point with trying to diagnose that. It's something
Okay.
else.
Not in, I'm wondering if he's suggesting that maybe there's defective RAM, but you've already said that RAM was not the source of the trouble, so we'll move on. Does this machine have a graphics card, and what graphics card is it? Matthew?
It's a NVIDIA GTX 1080 Ti.
GTX 1080 Ti. Okay. 2D versus 3D maybe. Is the computer used for anything other than gaming? A problem in the graphics card, 3D hardware. I'm not seeing a specific respondable question there. Of course, the computer's used for other things than gaming, isn't it? Correct?
Yeah, it,
And
YouTube and browsing the web, that kind of thing.
And the only time you're having the symptom is when you're playing these games.
Correct.
All right. Moving on. Might be network drivers. Gary's poses. Do you have any response to that, Matthew?
Well, I don't believe it's related to the problem.
Okay.
But
So enough to say that network drivers did not turn out to be the fix?
No, because I removed them completely and then added them back, and same thing happened.
Okay. Are these online games that you're playing?
No, so like games you would get through Steam, for example, Fortnite, and others like that.
Okay, well, Fortnite is an online game. It requires you being connected to the internet. Do all these games require connection to the internet? Yeah, that's what I mean by online.
I thought you meant through a browser. No.
No, just if they require internet connection, that's all I'm asking there.
Okay. Most of them don't, but there are a couple I played that do. But I believe I got the same result regardless of whether it was online or offline.
Okay, that's good information. So the games that you're referring to as not online games, you could actually disconnect from the internet and still play the games.
Correct.
Okay. Selvin, Spotify and YouTube use the network. Do the games use the network too? Maybe an Ethernet hardware problem. So I think we just responded to that by saying that you have non-internet games, non-network games, and had the same symptom. Ran Israel says, yes, it's an internal keyboard process. So that would be the caps lock and num lock key. Light is strictly from the keyboard itself and does not require the CPU's involvement. So that would imply as you're starting up a computer, as soon as you've turned the power on, you should be able to make the lights toggle on the keyboard. Now I know when you first turn it on, that's one of the things that I'll look at is the lights on the keyboard, and that shows me power is coming to the keyboard. But it seems to me that I've tried pressing the caps lock key and it doesn't toggle until the computer gets to a certain state of the boot up. But again, I'm not sure that would be of much interest to us in this case. Now, here's a point where I disagree with this or seriously question this, is because I've used caps lock key and num lock key when I'm approaching a computer that is still on, but it's locked up, and I've had times where the caps lock key and num lock key are lit, and I can't turn them off. When I press the key, they won't turn off. Well, the keyboard is obviously receiving power because the light couldn't be on without power, and I press those keys and I can't turn them off. And that tells me the CPU is locked up. The CPU is not responding to that request from the keyboard. So I'm not convinced, Grant, that it's internal keyboard process. And it is a useful tool for me in determining what is locked up about a computer. Lawn Dog says, Doug, I guess it is a way to use the keyboard to restart the graphics driver. Boy, your fingers are going to be busy pressing all those keys. But Google does have a comment about how to do it. And Dennis asks, video driver reset made a beep and then screen flickered. Oh, I'm starting stream at 3 p.m. Eastern time. Yes, I'm aware, Dennis, that we want to start an hour before the time that I currently have scheduled for my Fortnite stream to try to get into the server for Fortnite. That's just all you that aren't interested in Fortnite, just erase the last 20 seconds of my blabber. Is there any security software or antivirus installed on this machine? Good question. Matthew?
It's Malwarebytes in combination with Windows Defender.
Okay. Question answered. Moving on. Were you or did you open Device Manager? And if so, was there anything to catch your attention? Yellow exclamation marks. Well, he has told us that he can't open Device Manager since he can't get any response from keyboard or mouse other than highlighting a Windows button when he floats over it. But going into Device Manager before the lockup occurs, was there any, did you do that? Were there any exclamation marks?
Nothing stood out to me.
So you did check.
Yes, when I went to uninstall the network card driver.
All right. Yeah, when you went to install the network card driver, that would have been a time that it wasn't locked up yet, and you did not see any exclamation marks. Okay. Doug, has he restarted the computer? Second question, has he disabled fast boot? That's a pet peeve of mine that this function is on by default. It's ridiculous, but can cause issues. So let's break that down a little bit. You've been having this problem for many months. Obviously, you have restarted the computer in that amount of time. Was there, during your pursuit of this, was that the only thing that you could do to recover, was to restart the computer? And what did you have to do to restart it?
Way I restarted it, I could hit the reset switch on the case and it would respond immediately. I did try once out of curiosity. I thought, while it was locked up, I'll leave it half an hour, maybe it'll come back, but that didn't work.
Okay. And obviously you couldn't do Control-Alt-Delete because that wouldn't respond. You tried those key presses, they won't respond. So the only thing that would respond was the reset button. I also would be interested in a press and release of the power button. If Windows is configured to do a shutdown, when the power button is pressed, does it respond to that? And then that failing, holding down the power button would certainly work. So you doing the reset button is a command that goes straight to the motherboard for reset. So how about press and release of the power button? That would be Windows then issuing a shutdown command.
I never tried that because the reset button worked. I only would have tried that.
Okay.
Yeah, if the reset button hadn't worked.
Now, if you had tried that, does that help us anything with troubleshooting? I'm not entirely convinced, but in my mind, press and release of the power button, if you have Windows configured for press of the power button to shut the computer down, that would mean that Windows was issuing that command or performing that function of shutdown. So all that would be saying is that Windows is still functional at some level. Does that make a difference in the next troubleshooting step? I'm not convinced that it does. At the moment, it doesn't. Jeff says, same as my motherboard. So Jeff Ryman has the same motherboard you have. Lawn Dog, let's just eliminate the issue and see what happens. The issue would be Oh, the fast boot. Okay, I didn't deal with that second part of his question. Do you have fast boot enabled on the computer?
I can check. I don't think I should because I make sure to usually turn it off, but I'll check that for you.
You're checking that now, and he's on mute while he's doing that. His now another thing about using the reset button that I feel is an important strategy is when the computer comes back on, it's not doing a normal startup. And I have found computers to have symptoms after that type of recovery. So reset button, Windows comes up, log into Windows, and then perform a normal restart is a part of my ideal routine. Sometimes I forget to do that. But when I'm talking to a client who's having lockup situations and they have to hold down the power button to force it off or pull a power plug, whatever, and they bring it back up and they're still having problems, I want another full normal restart before we rely on the computer. So Matthew, what did you find?
I don't actually have the option of fast boot. It's not actually there. So I'm guessing I must have disabled it at a higher level.
Yeah, I think you have to have hibernation enabled.
Oh, that's disabled.
That is disabled. So that means fast boot's not going to work, and that option's not even available for you. All right. So I'm sure Long Dog is very happy to hear that about you, that you routinely disable fast boot. So that's what he was saying, eliminate the issue. And then Kenny asked, is BIOS up to date?
It is, but the latest BIOS update is from about a year ago now. I believe it's not been updated since then.
Okay. And your response is making me think that this did not turn out to be part of the solution.
No.
All right. Doug, come on now. We are talking about cleaning the fans inside the computer. Oh, okay. When he says clean the computer. No, I didn't know. Cleaning the computer, I did not know that you meant the fans inside the computer. I'm thinking you could be thinking of checking for clutterware, adware. You could be thinking deleting cookies. Yeah, I did not know that when you said clean the computer, you meant cleaning the fans inside the computer. So did you do that? I guess that's also implying, was there an overheating issue involved?
I didn't do that as part of this, but I will say once a year, take the computer outside and use a portable air duster on it.
Okay.
And that was only done maybe 4 months ago, so it wouldn't be very clogged up at this point, I wouldn't think.
Okay. And as long as we're mentioning fans, you confirmed all the fans are running?
Yes, had a look inside the case and could see they were all working.
All right. RAN cleaning probably refers to fans and dust filters, and that is indeed the case. Sounds like a failing power supply unit, Jonathan says. Does that have anything to do with the solution?
I don't believe it does, no.
Okay. Many people do not maintain the machines. They do not even think they are full of dust and dirt and dust bunnies. Certainly, that's a case. Mathew, and I felt pretty comfortable that he wouldn't be one of those. Also, this goes back to my first comment. There are a lot of things to check into. He could have some contaminated RAM sticks. Some of the RAM should be pulled and cleaned along with the socket. That's close to a technique that I will commonly use when there's a problem going on with the computer that I think may be RAM related, and simply removing them from each of the slots and putting them back in has solved problems for me in the past. And I have my own explanation of why I think that works sometimes, but I'm not going to go into that now. But he's already told us that RAM did not turn out to be the solution. Is BIOS up to date? Latest version is F22. Is that what you have, Matthew?
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Okay. Now for those who may have joined late, I'll let you know Matthew has already solved the issue. This is a troubleshooting quiz that we're going through with throwing out ideas of to see what people would do and consider and look for, and then we will get the answer from him before we're done here, unless my internet crashes again. You know, that's been a thing. So we could have a cliffhanger. Jim says, I had a responsive problem some years ago due to short amount of RAM. A responsive problem. Was that in relation to a prior comment from Jim Cassandros? I had a responsive problem some years ago due to short amount of RAM. A low amount of RAM? In what, 4 gigabytes of RAM, or not quite sure there you meant. Sam Mack, NVIDIA drivers are up to date from OEM site. Is that a question? Is he telling us that Mathew's NVIDIA drivers are up to date? Maybe he's saying he would check that. And you already did tell us about updating the NVIDIA drivers, correct, Mathew?
Correct. Went through a few different versions, and same thing happened even if I did a clean install of those drivers.
Okay, so did not that it was not a driver issue. Yes, you can put this kind of on the not too likely, but believe me, I've experienced several machines with weird things happening and cleaning the RAM sockets, repaired them. Yeah, like I say, now in cleaning the RAM sockets, yeah, but I'd take the RAM out and blow it with compressed air and put them back in. It's just about all I would do. And sometimes just if I didn't have compressed air at hand, I'd just pull them out and put them back in. That seems to be enough to reconnect them or scratch through the oxidation that might be there. I don't know. Again, not an electrical engineer. Forbin Colossus, how does one test a motherboard for electrical integrity? If it posts, is that the end of the analysis? Okay, so you're saying if it posts, could there still be an electrical problem on the motherboard? Well, sure. In the circuitry of the pathways for your storage media, if it's faulty, the computer could post power on self-test, but still fail to communicate with any of the other hardware or peripherals on the computer. And it could be an electrical problem in the sense of the circuitry on the motherboard, the electronic components on the motherboard being inadequate, or the amount of power being provided to the other components. Like the graphics card will often have its own power connection, and I know that there have been situations, I'm going to say Kerry Holzman's videos and other people's videos, where they wind up finding a power supply will provide enough power for the computer to post, but then not operate properly. So no, I'd say that's not the end of the analysis. Lawn Dog, then there are other things. This is what I was trying to convey. There's a lot of things to look into beyond just determining a software issue. We have to start somewhere. Yeah, absolutely. How much RAM does he have in this machine for the sake of knowledge? Mathew?
32 gig.
32 gigabytes, okay. I bet it's not hardware. That's going to be the problem. Will be Windows, network, video drivers being up to date. Okay, so this is Gary saying at this point, he's saying it's not hardware. It's something else. Windows, network, video drivers being up to date. With that much, is he on point with that?
Not with it being a software problem is all I'll say.
Not with it being, he's not on track with regarding it being a software problem? I'm not quite sure I
Yes.
understood your response. You're saying it was not a software problem.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's go. Oh, I'll ask you this question. You proposed that we talk about this. I'm assuming because you found it maybe surprising, interesting, intriguing what the solution wound up being. It was perhaps not something that you would have expected. Is that on point?
That would be fair to say, yes.
Okay. Let's see. Londog to Gary. What you think about suggesting a Windows refresh? Not my favorite thing to do with probably all the software is installed, but what are your thoughts? Now, I'll add my thoughts to that before asking Mathew's response. My thoughts on that is I will use that technique when I'm at a point in troubleshooting where I've spent a fair amount of time, and what I'm going to do is not do a fresh Windows install and build the system out to what I want it to be, but just do an install on a different drive typically, and that would prove to me that the hardware is okay. But the problem is you'd actually have to install those games and play them perhaps for some period of time. So because this is something that you said at most it happened a few times, well, every time you played a game. I think you got to that point where you said it got to a point where every time you played a game it would eventually do this. Is that right? Could you ever actually play a game and finish it and exit normally and be okay?
Yes, initially, but as you said, it got worse over time to the point where it would just happen, let's say, every time I played the game, but it didn't start out that way.
All right, so I would be, if I were in that troubleshooting situation, I think I could easily see myself saying, okay, I'm really, really certain this is not a physical hardware problem. Now, to prove that to myself, I'll install Windows on a different drive, install the game, play the game a few times over, enough times that I can say, yeah, it's running fine, therefore the hardware's okay, and then go back to my original drive, my original operating system, and try to continue with the troubleshooting. So that would just be a step that I would do when I got to the point where I said, look, I put in this much amount of time. I could take this little amount of time to prove my assumption that it's not a hardware problem, because I might be surprised and find that it fails then as well, which that tells me it is a hardware problem. If it is a hardware problem, then that should fail because the hardware's got the problem. However, it could be a hardware capacity problem where, because of all the other stuff that's going on with the fully installed operating system, with all the different softwares on it, that it's reached some kind of level of limit that it runs into that problem. So did you try doing a new install of Windows in any way whatsoever?
I hadn't got to that point when I found the problem.
Okay, when you found the solution. Yeah, but if you were a Doug, you might go ahead and try that anyway. No, I'm kidding. You think at some point that it would be something to do after we kind of go through the Inquisition here and things to dry. Yeah, so that's me and Lawn Dog saying the same thing there. About at some point we might do that. Gary, you should only run one antivirus and malware software at the same time. Malwarebytes is pretty well documented, as I understand, for wanting or even preferring to have Windows Defender also running at the same time. I think that's what you're using, right? When Malwarebytes and Windows Defender.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Boss says, I'm with Doug on the keyboard being a quick pulse checker. I've used it as well to check responsiveness. Gary Lawn Dog, I don't usually do a Windows refresh unless I screw up on testing. Yeah, and I'll say also, it's not a common thing that I would do. I wouldn't jump to that very quickly. Greg, I think there's still keyboard controller chips on motherboard. However, this issue is only when gaming. I would disable Malwarebytes. Did you disable or uninstall Malwarebytes as part of your troubleshooting?
I didn't know.
Did not. Okay, that's fine. Let's move on. Rand to Gary, Malwarebytes Premium disables the online component of Defenders, so you're indeed left with just one online running component of the active real-time virus protection. Yeah, and Malwarebytes actually does that when you do the installation. You don't have to go do that yourself, is my understanding. On to Gary, you notice how we get into this conversation, we're finding out little nuances. For example, a reset button. Haven't seen those on PC in years. The next question, how does he shut his machine off on a daily basis? Now, Big Beast Build does not have a reset button, but the motherboard does. And there's a reset connectors on the motherboard, of course. But this case does not have a reset button. At least I'm pretty sure I'm correct in saying that. I can open the door, the magnetic door on the side, and press a reset button on the motherboard. I don't think I've had occasion to do that. This question is, how do you shut off on a daily basis? Well, that's presuming that you do shut down on a daily basis, which is not necessarily true. I don't. What about you?
I leave the PC on as much as I can.
Okay. So you don't have any routine frequency of restarting the computer. You restart it when you choose to.
Yeah, maybe try to restart it once a week, but I'm sure there are times I forget to. But
yeah, you don't consider it a matter of necessary computer maintenance to do that?
No.
All right, and neither do I. Let's get over here. Okay, Doug, thanks for expressing your experiences with doing certain kinds of reset procedures. They all do odd things at times. That's why I suggest make sure fast boot is turned off. Now, my main reason for wanting fast boot turned off is I've had this instance happen with my clients where they'll call me, they're having a problem with their computer. I ask, did you restart the computer? And they say yes, many times. I connect remotely and I restart the computer and the problem's solved. And so I asked them, show me, what did you click on? What did you do to restart the computer? And when this set of circumstances happens, they click on the Windows button and they click on power and they click on shutdown. I said, that's not what I asked you to do. I asked you to restart it, not shut it down. I don't say it quite that way because that feels a little accusatory. What I'll do is I'll explain to them the difference between shutdown and restart, and then depending upon the interest level of the client, I'll actually take them to show them the setting of the fast startup. Now, when I set up a computer for a client here in my lab, that's part of my checklist is to disable fast boot, fast startup, whatever it's called, because it doesn't. When I'm setting up computers these days, in particular, they're going to be SSDs or NVMe's. Or, M.2s. And so the fast startup is just so irrelevant. And even on a spinning drive, I would disable fast startup because it's not very often that my clients are restarting their computer and the wait time just isn't that big a deal. Spinning drives on a computer that's in good shape is going to be a minute at most. Once they get long in the tooth and have a bunch of clutter on them and lots of things loading with Windows, it can be longer than that if they're spinning drives. So yeah, I routinely like to have that disabled. It may not be the problem, and I also typically disable hibernation. It may not be the problem we're trying to resolve, but I think we should take it out of the equation. So that was in referring to, must have been referring to fast boot turned off. So he did confirm that. Hibernation disabled, fast boot option won't be there, correct? Check to see if anti-malware service executable is running. These are scary to ran. I'm not sure is it on something else? I think we're on, this is about Mathew's issue. I have seen it still be running. Oh, okay. So Gary's saying that he's seen an anti-malware service from Windows Defender still running when you have installed Malwarebytes Premium, the paid version, and expect Windows Defender to not be running. Gary, overheating is not the problem. He's told us that. And ran to Gary, I'm only using Defender, but when I tried Malwarebytes Premium once, after uninstalling it, I had to re-enable Defender. And I've seen that. So uninstalling Malwarebytes, you have to manually go in and re-enable Windows Defender. Task Manager, look it up and it's a pig. Okay, this is all referring to Windows Defender. And I have seen computers where it's misbehaving and really eating up a lot of resources, particularly when just restarting the computer and checking that anti-malware service or checking whatever services are still occupying a lot of the processor and hard drive during the minute after Windows is launched. Referring to MBAM. Let's see, move on. Okay, Doug, I would start doing some things like running check disk and then running DISM commands to make sure all files are in order, lost change in clusters are resolved, to make sure the operating system has been organized properly and no errors. Matthew, did any of that line there, check disk, DISM, all that, did that have anything to do with the eventual solution?
It didn't, no.
Did not. Okay, reasonable thing to ask for. I've found it to be what kind of a, well, I have nothing else, no other ideas right now, so I'll go try doing those things. Anti-malware service executable is part of Windows Defender. Let's see what we've got. Oh, Malwarebytes. That's MBAM. Sorry. Malwarebytes freeware is just an offline scanner. It doesn't interfere with Defender. The paid version includes online component that replaces the online component in Defender. Really, the free version of Malwarebytes is, oh yes, only on offline scanner. You have to request a scan, and it doesn't actively monitor the computer. It's not an active protection. Okay, yes, it's installed on the computer. I paused there at offline scanner because ESET has a online scanner that scans when you connect to their website, doesn't actually install on your computer. So it took me a moment to straighten that out. This may not mean anything, but did you try a clean install of Windows? He's already answered no to that. And that he didn't get to the point of doing that by the time he found the solution. Well, Doug, the cool people have Contact Cleaner. It helps get rid of oxidation between the socket and the contacts of the RAM. I have Contact Cleaner. Yeah, it's not up there. It's over there. It's a WD-40 product, the one I have. It's electrical contacts cleaner. So I guess that means I'm cool. Hey, all right. I don't like that idea. Ryan, this is probably unlikely. Did it have a virus or any malware? So did you find virus or any malware?
I didn't find any, but I wasn't specifically looking at that. You know, Malwarebytes didn't say you've got a virus or anything like that.
Okay. And moving on. Please do a Control-Shift-Escape. See if you have that service on your system now. That's Gary Turan in regards to that Windows Defender service. Was disk integrity checked? Any smart errors? So that'd be looking for any crystal disk info, something like that.
Okay, so that was the very first step. Did the diagnose.
Okay.
Well, I didn't. Ran the portable version of Crystal Disk Info, and I got 2 drives in the system. One's the main SSD, the other one's a storage drive. Both of them showed 100% good. So that I deduced that probably wasn't the issue.
All right. I'm getting close to my shutdown time because I've got places to go, people to see, things to do. That means the Fortnite chapter ending event that starts in 1 hour, but we're supposed to get in an hour before. So I'm going to close this down pretty soon here. So I'm not going to be able to read through all these things. We've got through a lot of comments here. I'll just hit the ones that have done me in orange. Thanks. I'm wondering if there's a standard approach to running a series of electrical tests to verify a mother is 100% good. There's power testers for power supplies, but not specifically what you were asking there, the way you worded it, I don't think. Windows does not let anti-malware service executable running by default, which is part of Windows Defender. Windows does not let anti-malware service executable running by default, which is part of Windows Defender. Windows does not let anti-malware service executable running. I'm kind of missing some, I'm not fitting in some extra words there that I think I need. But anyway, I do need to shut this down. Catherine says hello. Hello to Catherine. And I've missed some names, I know, but I need to shut down. So we got to get Matthew's answer here. You're correct. A better term would be passive correction. It does by default left out a word. It does by default. Windows does by default. Windows does not let. I'm sorry. It does by default. It does by default. Windows does by default let anti-malware service executable running. Okay, I'm sorry, I need to move on. Okay, so here, let's get to Matthew's answer. Let's see. This button. Okay, so Matthew, tell us what happened.
Okay, so I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, first thing I did was run Crystal Disk Info, verified the drives were working. If it had come to it later on, I may have, done check disk, stuff like that. So we never got to that. Next thing I did, I had an older version of Prime 95 CPU test. And I thought, well, I'll run that and leave it for an hour, which is way overkill and don't recommend. But I thought, well, if it can survive that, it's probably not the CPU. And it did survive. It came back. The system was working fine. So, okay, so it's probably not the CPU. And I believe Prime 95 does do some RAM tests as well, but don't quote me on that. So next thing I did, I thought, wow, got to test out the video card. And I downloaded the Heaven benchmark utility.
Sure.
And it's got like 24 tests in it. And I thought I'll just put it to the highest settings to, speed up the diagnostic. And then sure enough, on test number 6, I think it crashed. Okay, I'll remove the GPU driver, do a clean install of that, run it again. Sure enough, crashed on test 5, I believe. So I said, okay, well, this is looking more like a GPU issue. So at that point, I ordered a new one and it came next day. Took the old GPU out, put the new one in, ran Heaven benchmark again, and it passed. Well, okay, that's good. Ran it again, passed again. Played one particular game for 2 hours, let's say, and it worked fine, no problems. Played another game next day, worked fine. It's not crashed since, and I replaced the GPU about a week ago now. So if the problem was going to show up with how often it was happening before, I'm sure I would have seen it by now, but I haven't. So that's my diagnostic.
Okay, so you had me on pins and needles there because I thought you were going to come up with, say, after replacing the graphics adapter, it eventually did crash again, but no, it hasn't. So was this, when you said NVIDIA GTX 1080 Ti, was that the old one and the new one, or the same model?
That's the old one. The new video cards, RTX 3060 by NVIDIA.
Okay. Okay. So you're fixed. It was the graphics card. And but who in chat wanted to? I don't think anyone suggested that, right? A graphics driver was suggested, but the actual graphics card. Well, that is hardware. And didn't we at one point say it wasn't a hardware problem? Which whoever we denied that to would be upset with us because graphics adapter card is hardware. So anyway, that's the result. I need to shut down the stream. Matthew, thank you for bringing this to me. Thank you for sending the email, offering this as a topic. I think this has been fun.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and shut down the Zoom session. Would you go ahead and say goodbye to the audience, please?
Bye, everybody.
All right. And ending Zoom and bring up my email address if you'd like to send a question of a topic that you'd like me to cover or something you would like to have help with. We can do it by remote connection to your computer. We can do Zoom session. We can just respond through a video with the chat room. Variety of things. I want very much for this channel to be about interacting with people and getting deeper into the questions or issues that people are having with their computers and trying to solve problems and in a deep and meaningful way. So there we go. I hope that was useful. Have a great day. Catch you later. Goodbye.